Hello and welcome to the weekly Ask Show, where you leave hashtag Ask GMBN Tech down in the comments below and we'll try and get back to you with an answer. Well, let's dive straight in. My first question here is from Luke MTB, who said, Ask GMBN Tech, does rotor thickness really matter? I have upgraded my brakes from Shimano to Magura, but I have noticed Magura recommend 2mm rotors and Shimano are 1.8mm, which is the minimum thickness that Magura recommend. Will it affect modulation? So it's a bit of a brand standard. So to answer your question sort of super directly, does thickness matter? Not necessarily, but it does matter when they start to wear out. So all discs will wear out. I've got one that's a bit worn here, and you'll see that over time, it will actually wear out the thickness of the disc. It will get thinner. So bear that in mind, that if Magura calipers, their brakes are designed to work with 2mm thick rotors, then Shimano's 1.8 is already 0.2mm smaller. So to answer your question, they will kind of work, maybe not to the best of their ability. And with Magura saying, as you said, that Magura recommends a minimum of 1.8, which is the width of a Shimano disc, that means that you haven't got much room for wear. So there's not much wiggle room there in terms of longevity. So even if they do work fine, then as they start to wear out, they're going to get, past the point of optimal braking. So really the long answer to your question is yes, they will work, probably, but they won't last as long and you'll end up replacing them sooner anyway. So it's up to you whether you want to run them now or whether you want to get the 2mm thick Magura pads so that you know that they will last a lot longer and your braking will be a little more on point with those Magura calipers as well. So Silo Evans, probably pronouncing that wrong, so sorry. Can I install a tapered fork on a non-tapered steerer tube? And do companies like Cane Creek make headset cups for this? There's a lot of depending factors here, mainly depending on measurements. So let's just go ahead and explain. This here is obviously a tapered fork, and you're trying to install this on a frame that has a straight steerer tube. So basically, if your bike started with 1/8 of an inch wide, which is this, and you're trying to put this in there, which is now 1/1/8 wide at the top, but 1.5 inch at the bottom, it's obviously a lot thicker, a lot wider, and it's probably not going to work in your frame because your frame is designed for something much, much thinner. Bearing in mind, I don't know all of the measurements of your frame or what even measurements you're looking at with your new and your old forks. I would say go to a bike shop and have a look and see what the sort of combinations are that you can go up to. So next up, we've got Harper Taplin. My front brakes on my dual suspension make a weird wobbling, squeaking sound when I brake. I've heard it on others too, so I've assumed it's normal, and they're worse when it's wet. Is it bad for the long-term side effects of brakes? I mean, it's not bad for them in terms of it's not going to damage them in any way. Some pads are noisy, and they certainly are during the wet. That's pretty normal, especially if you're running sintered brake pads. They're usually really noisy in the wet. And I've had some discs that just insist on making noise as well, no matter what I do. But there's a couple of things that can make brakes even noisier. You might have contaminated a disc, for example, or contaminated your pads. So if this has always been a problem, it might just be your combination of pads and discs that are just prone to it. If it started happening later after you've bought the bike, then there might be something wrong. And there's loads of things that could make it noisy. So what I'm going to do, because I've done a more in-depth video about this, is leave that link in the description below, and I go into a few reasons why your brakes might be super noisy. But in the meantime, give them a really good clean on the discs and on the pads, maybe even replace the pads and see if that helps. Okay, so my next question is from Gastron, who says, I always use dry lube from Finish Line or Muck Off. Prior, I clean my chain, I re-lube every 60 kilometers. The chain is fine, but the jockey wheels get a lot of grit. What can be done? So it might be, if your chain's absolutely fine, it might be that you're taking more care over taking excess lube off of your chain and you're not doing it to your jockey wheels. So make sure when you've cycled everything through and you're taking the excess lube off of your chain that you also do it to your jockey wheels, because if there's any oil or lube on those, then that's going to attract grit and dirt. I've also found that this kind of happens anyway. Jockey wheels are a bit of a magnet for dirt. I would get yourself like a toothbrush or a wire brush or a sort of a detailing brush like this, or even like a claw brush like this. Muck Off do an actual claw brush that's really good for getting on the jockey wheels, and you just pedal backwards and take all of that kind of nice satisfying layer of mud off of your jockey wheels, and try and start with them clean. And yeah, hopefully that won't happen. If it does, it just might be like one of those things that you might have to put up with. Sorry. So next up, Francesco Pisano, sorry. I have a 2021 Specialized Epic Expert and would like to do a 50-hour service on both the rear shock and the front suspension. Given the different setup of the brain suspension, I don't want to risk damaging anything. Do you know if it's possible to service them without the need of super expensive specialist tools, or am I doomed to fail? I'm not going to doom you to fail, but for starters, let me just let you know that Specialized actually say that their brain boosts the service intervals to 125 hours. So you might actually have a lot longer in your suspension than you think, more than 50 hours, that's for sure. And even longer on your damper system. So that's only recommended to be serviced every 250 hours. So way more than 50 you think you need. And even more than that, Specialized actually say they offer 2 years of free service in conjunction with key dealers in certain areas. So basically you need to go and find your local specialized dealer, or maybe a Specialized concept store. Let them know how long you've been riding it. If it's within 2 years of buying it, then you can probably get a free service on it anyway. I've had a look at the kind of internals of the Specialized suspension system, and the brain mainly affects the damper. So the forks do look the same. In theory, you should be able to service the lower legs in the same way, but I wouldn't service the damper. That could be more complicated. It might require some more specialist tools, as you say. Personally, I would get a professional to do the dampers anyway. They're much better at it. They've got all the equipment. But yeah, I think your first step is to go and check what you're entitled to with your local Specialized dealer, or just leave it for another 125 to 250 hours anyway, because that's how long it's supposed to last. Well, thanks for staying tuned, and if you have any questions of your own, don't forget to use hashtag Ask GMBN Tech down in the comments below, and we'll try and get back to you. Thanks for watching. Bye.